I retired in 1998 and my final job had been as an office manager for a spin-out from 3M, brand new little company, and I got to do all kinds of setting up of office stuff, and I had a ball. When I left that job 8 years later, after having, among other things, edited some of the boss's applications to the National Science Foundation, the last thing he said to me was, you know, your real strength is editing. After all those months of office management, I wasn't sure whether to be insulted or complimented. But that got me to thinking how much I enjoy editing, how much I enjoy working with words. And I got started on the Professional Editors Network and decided, well, if I was going to edit, maybe I should know more about writing. So I went to the Loft Literary Center and took courses, went to several week-long workshops in Madison, Wisconsin. And one class at the Literary Center, there were several people, quite a few people. One person spoke up and said, if anybody wants to join a writing group, meet at such and such a place on such and such a date in June. That was in '03. And we've been meeting every week since. Almost every week. Except when one or two run off on vacation or somebody goes to Florida or something. So I figure I've probably learned a little something about writing. When I was 7 or 8, it was approaching the 4th of July. And Mother let me write a little skit about the 4th of July. Until I came to the place where I said, down with the British! And she rushed over and shut the windows on the side of that neighbor for fear. But ever since, words have flowed through every job I've ever done. The ideas for these stories come from odd places. At least 2 of the stories in this book were prompted by pictures I had seen. One of them was a patio in Madison, Wisconsin. This patio had plastic chairs for people to go. It was outside the convention center, and plastic chairs for people to sit in. And I got to looking at it, and a story grew out of that, and you'll find it in the book. And one of them was a photograph a snapshot we had taken on a trip to Colorado. And the view out of our friend's front window had a driveway and a road and then trees, and behind that was a round mountain. Now, mountains are supposed to be pointed, right? So it's called Dome Mountain for some reason. And that too is in one of the stories. Having written all these and edited, because I edit more naturally than I write, I have edited and re-edited and re-edited, and the stories you'll find in the book won't quite match what I'm going to read to you because I've edited it for reading. The story is called The Turbulence. As the airplane shook, Leilani scanned her passengers, looking for any who might need reassurance. She had been a flight attendant so long that this tossing and twisting didn't scare her anymore. However, troublesome passengers were another story. A man in the very last passenger seat had been staring at her, but every time she looked at him, he turned away. Was there a problem? His placid face was bronzed with wide cheekbones. It gave her no clue. Leilani made her way along the aisle, smiling or nodding reassuringly as she passed any passengers who glanced up at her. No shoulder she tapped. The woman jerked, dropping her book. Leilani simply said, "Seatbelt, please." That man's eyes were focused on her again, increasing her uneasiness. Passengers sometimes got the wrong idea when an attendant treated them kindly, and Leilani and her colleagues all had stories. The plane dropped sharply and she heard, "Ah, that's hot." She went to the galley and brought the soldier a towel to mop up his coffee. Her quick glance at the back caught the man watching her again before his eyes shifted. What was his problem? Continuing down the aisle, she braced herself against the overhead compartments. A young mother holding her whimpering child looked up, wide-eyed, tense as a guitar string. "Are we going to crash?" Leilani shook her head. "The plane is built to take it. As soon as the pilot finds a calmer altitude, this will settle down." She gave the mother's arm a gentle pat. "Okay?" From her experience, she knew that flying with a child was never easy, although she had no plans to find out for herself. The man at the back was still staring at her. He did look a bit familiar. Was he a frequent flyer? But that didn't explain why he was watching her so intently. The plane swung wildly, throwing her against a seat back. This was unusual. She rubbed her hip and straightened her uniform jacket. "This is the pilot. We are changing our route to avoid a patch of bad weather. We should be clear in just a few minutes. Flight attendants, please take your seats." Moving toward her seat in the back, Leilani wove and wobbled as the plane shook. The man at the back searched her face as she approached. She looked away so as not to encourage the passengers getting. To her distress, he reminded her of Koa, her older and only brother, her lodestar. His name meant fearless. When he was killed in Afghanistan, she lost her way for a while. Finally, her mom taught her how to put her memories of Koa in a bubble that could float along with her as she lived a new life with a different shape. That helped, but the pain darkened the bubble. Even now, she kept to herself rather than risk losing someone close again. Ironically, of the three sisters, she had been the only one who stayed in Hawaii to help their aging parents. "Leilani," she jumped. His voice was deep and resonant, tentative, with a resonant tone that echoed her brother's. "Did I say your name right, Leilani?" She only nodded. Sorry her name tag was so readable. As she drew even with his seat, he put out a hand. "Leilani, would you have coffee with me in the airport? I beg your pardon, I don't know you." Suddenly she remembered this man had been on other flights between San Francisco and Honolulu, but he had never spoken to her before. Was he a regular or was he after her? She had heard from other attendants about dealing with stalkers, but this was the first time she had reason to worry. The plane tipped. In her fall, her head banged the back of his seat, throwing her black hair in her face before she plopped into her seat. She heard his seatbelt unclip. "Need help?" "No," she snapped. "Please, just buckle up." He did as she asked, but he leaned over the armrest to ask, "You all right?" She tightened the blessed seatbelt, and her head fell back against the headrest. "Yes, I am all right." She ran her hand lightly over her face. "Or I will be soon." "You're hurt." He sounded as if he were looking for an excuse to make contact. "I am a flight attendant. I'm used to getting bounced around, okay?" Giving good service was one thing, but this was getting too personal for her. "Sorry." He paused barely long enough to take a breath. "Am I right that your name means heavenly flower?" "Yes." He leaned back a moment, then leaned forward. "Is your last name Bridges?" Leilani stiffened. "Where did you get that? A stalker for sure, or why would he have unearthed her name?" She could handle a plane shaken by threatening weather, but this she had no idea how to deal with. Dread clutched at her throat. "Is it? Why should I? Because I'm looking for a Leilani Bridges." He was pushing now. "But I don't know you. I've been looking for her for years. Are you Leilani Bridges?" For years? Who was this man? What did he want with her? "Why?" The pilot broke in. "We have turned off the seatbelt sign so you may move around the cabin. We ask that when you are in your seat, you keep the seatbelt fastened." Then the man responded, "Because she may be my sister." Absurd! Speechless, she unbuckled the seatbelt and surged from her seat. She needed to get to work. Please, he said, grasping her arm as she rose, ask your mother if she put up for adoption a child born on April 29, 1973. Got that? April 29, 73. Without saying a word, she brushed aside his hand and stepped into the aisle. Preposterous. Her mom was not that kind. As Leilani passed up the aisle, she checked each passenger, patted the shoulder of the young mother, and made it to the kitchen area before the implication of what the man said registered. In 1973, her mom would have been 15. And with her upbringing, she would never have, unless. Her mom had been super strict with her girls. No dating until 17 and then only in a group, never alone with a male. All three girls had made it to adulthood without incident. They had grumbled. Their friends had no such rules. But they never thought to ask why. The possibility that such rigidity could come from having been assaulted and forced to endure a pregnancy would never have crossed their minds. Never. Leilani detested the idea that her mother might have suffered with such a secret all these years. Finally, she had to know. She stepped to the intercom and called the pilot. Sir, I need to make an emergency call. Permission granted, make it quick. She punched in the number. Mom, this is Leilani. I can't talk long, I'm in the air, but I have a question. Did you give birth to a boy on April 29, 1973? She heard a loud gasp. Aye! Then sobbing, Hehuna, Hehuna, Hehuna. Hehuna meant the hidden. Mama, yes or no? Click. Could it be true? Leilani sat down to try to get her breath. If it were true, then this man was a half-brother. And it'd be no wonder he made her think of Koa. But for her mother's sake, she would almost have preferred having a stalker to deal with. The plane began its descent into Honolulu. Leilani had work to do, which she did on automatic pilot while her mind whirled in another universe. What if he really were a half-brother? By the time the plane taxied to the gate, she knew she had to pursue the matter. The man from the last seat was the final one to come forward, and he stopped at the door and asked again, Is your name Bridges? Leilani took a deep breath and looked him in the eye. How do I know you're not just a very accomplished stalker? Oh, dear God, no. I've been searching forever, ever since I had my DNA ancestry thing done. Leilani swore to herself. Why had it been so important to her to know how close she was to full-blooded Hawaiian? Never dawned on her they'd give out her information. He went on. I'm a sales rep, so I fly this route a lot, and when I saw your name badge, I had to work up my courage to ask. And what is your name? Oh, sorry, he quickly produced his business card. Here, just to show that I'm legit. My adoptive family named me Larry Williams, he said, pointing at the card. But as a kid, I learned I came with a Hawaiian name, Hehuna, whatever that means. That was enough. Leilani blinked hard. Her heart thumped. Her palms sweated. Yes, my last name is Bridges, and I will have coffee with you if... Wonderful, wonderful! He took her arm and walked her up the gangway. That Cafe Panini is right here in the airport, and there'll be other people around so you can feel safe, even though you don't know me yet. Like he'd read Mom's rule book, she thought. He was more talkative than Koa, but he had the same kindly way of taking charge. Larry, one meaning of Hehuna is the hidden. That's all Mom said when I called her to ask. In 73, she was just 15, and she didn't get married until 4 years later. I don't know whether even my father knew about you. So only 15, and kept it totally secret. Huh. And you know nothing about how fathered me, so it could have been, geez, maybe I don't want to know more. They entered the cafe. He asked, hot or cold, as he pointed to the counter and the cooler full of beverages. Coffee plain. Larry ordered their coffees and found a table, and as they sat, Larry said, would you tell me about your, dare I say, our family? She flinched, not ready for that yet. For now, I'll tell you about only one. Koa was my older brother, killed in action.
You remind me of him. You sound like him. You act like him. Oh, man, he sighed and stared out the window. I was an only child. You don't have a picture of him, do you? She hesitated. That picture, always in her pocket, was a private matter. Well, what was the harm? She handed it over to Larry and watched his eyes get big and then fill with tears. I can see what you mean about a resemblance. Her phone rang. It was her mother, in a voice rushed and breathless. Who told you? Leilani replied. A passenger who said he was adopted and that was his birthday. And oh, he said Hehuna was part of his birth name. Is he gone? No, we're having coffee together at the airport. Ask him. Her question was almost too soft to be heard. Just a minute, she turned to Larry. Do you have a mole behind your right ear? He nodded. He says yes. She paused. Okay, we'll meet you in front where passengers get dropped off. Larry leaned forward to return the picture, whispering, The mother? Leilani nodded. My mother? Jackpot! Oh man, I can't believe this. Thank you, thank you, thank you. His eyes closed for a moment before he continued. See, my dad was military, and I lost my parents to malaria when I was just 17. This way, Leilani slipped the picture back in her pocket and held out both hands to him. As though in a trance, he allowed his hands to cross the gap to hers and grasped them in a death grip. Her heart sang. That was the way Koa grabbed her hands when he came home on leave. They studied each other in silence until finally she said, Yes, this way you will have a family again. And she almost couldn't say it out loud. She cleared her throat and said, I will have a big brother again. Thank you all. I hope everybody here takes home a bookmark. Just if you can have a book too, but a bookmark anyway.